What's up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're diving deep into one of the most debated topics in Dallas right now, DaRon Bland. Before you go anywhere, if you want the most in-depth, fact-based Cowboys analysis on YouTube, smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell because we're about to separate fact from fiction on some claims you've been seeing all over social media. We're talking nickel versus outside corner debate, contractual situation, his short-term future, his long-term future with this team, all of it. Give this video a thumbs up and make sure you share this on social media because I think a lot of Cowboys fans need to hear this breakdown. Let's get into it. Before we dive into all the details, today's show is made possible by Prize Picks, so stick around because I'll tell you how you can win some cash. But first, let's begin with the nickel versus outside corner debate because I have seen the claim floating around social media, and I mean, I've seen it everywhere, that DaRon Bland was only good when he was playing nickel corner. The narrative is that he's never been good on the outside, that he can't handle playing boundary corner. So I want to look at the actual data, both where has he actually played throughout his career, and how has he actually performed in coverage at those different positions. Pro Football Focus does detailed position charting for every snap a player takes, and they group cornerback alignments into 5 different positions. They track defensive line, which is when you're on the line of scrimmage, whether that's as a defensive end, or in most cases for DaRon Bland, it's like a stand-up edge rusher, kind of coming off the edge to blitz, almost always from that nickel corner spot in designed pressures. They track the box, which is basically playing like a linebacker, could be goal line stuff, but also a lot of nickel corner reps where you're in the box defending the run. They track slot corner, which is further outside, not quite in the box. They track wide corner, which is playing on the boundary. And they track free safety, which again can be some very limited examples. Sometimes goal line packages. It's not quite a perfect split of slot versus wide corner, but for the most part, you can almost view it as wide corner reps and everything else essentially being nickel corner responsibilities. So let's go through the data year by year and see where DaRon Bland has actually lined up. In 2025, there was more split work for Bland in terms of where he lined up. He had some defensive line reps on blitzes, some box reps, some slot corner, wide corner, even a few free safety snaps. But here's the key stat. Just under 60% of his total snaps came at wide corner, at outside corner in the 2025 campaign. So even last year when people say he struggled, he was primarily playing outside. Let's go back to 2024 now and look at where he lined up that season. He had one single defensive line rep the entire year, but 91.7% of his snaps came at outside corner. He was an outside cornerback in 2024. That's just factual. 2023, the Pick 6 King season, was pretty darn similar to 2024 in terms of alignment. 70+% of his snaps, almost 75% to be exact, came at wide corner as well. So that incredible season where he had all those interceptions and touchdowns, he was primarily an outside corner. In 2022, his rookie season essentially, there were more nickel reps. That is the year he played the most nickel snaps over the course of his entire NFL career up to this point. But beyond that rookie season, it's pretty consistently been outside corner reps for DaRon Bland. That is the truth. That's what the data shows. Beyond his rookie season, including that incredible 2023 Pick 6 King campaign, DaRon Bland has mostly played outside corner. That is where he has been aligned. That is where he's lined up on the field. Now, obviously, with Caleb Downs on the roster, Downs is going to play a bunch of nickel for this defense. So Bland's not going to lose snaps to a safety playing nickel. But in a vacuum, where do you think DaRon Bland should play? N for nickel, O for outside. Let me know in the comments section of today's show what you think his best position is. But that's just where he lined up on the field. That doesn't tell us much about how good he was at those different positions. We've got Pro Football Focus charting data for all his coverage reps, and we can separate out nickel from outside and run comparisons. The Pick 6 season in 2023 was absolutely awesome. It was special. It was so much fun to watch as a Cowboys fan. But the production hasn't been the same since then, and injuries in general have been a huge problem for DaRon Bland over the past 2 years. It's really tough to be good at any position when you're not healthy and you're battling through issues. So let's start with 2022 and break down the stats. We've got a bunch of different metrics to look at. Receptions allowed versus targets, which gives you completion percentage, total yards allowed, yards per target, and then touchdowns allowed and interceptions. In general, what you should expect to see is that completion rate will be higher when playing nickel because the passes are shorter and they're easier to complete. And the yards allowed are going to be lower for that same reason. In 2022, looking at the numbers, I think pretty clearly he was better at nickel. I think he was a better nickel corner than he was playing outside corner that rookie season. In 2023, that Seattle game kind of does some damage to his stats because he did not have a good showing against DK Metcalf in that matchup. But overall, these are great numbers across the board. Sub 60% completion rate allowed, which is excellent. Yeah, the yards allowed are a bit higher than you'd like to see, but there's some safety play to be blamed there as well with missed assignments. He had 7 interceptions that season, and he didn't get that many reps at nickel, but when he did play nickel, he didn't get beat either. He was absolutely awesome in 2023. There's really no way around that. The production speaks for itself. 2024, this is where things start to get a little bit dicey with the numbers, and we'll come back to that. But first, let me tell you about today's sponsor. Today's show is made possible by Prize Picks. The playoffs are here for basketball and hockey with some incredible games happening. Baseball season is underway, and it's time to cash in with Prize Picks, which is America's #1 sports picks app and the best place to win cash while watching sports. The app is really easy to use. You just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. For example, here's a season-long 2-pick power play. Speaking of health and guys staying healthy, if Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow can stay on the field, they're going to hit these numbers. Dak Prescott more than his projected passing touchdowns, Joe Burrow more than his projected passing yards. That's a 2-pick power play that could pay out nicely. Prize Picks now has early payouts, so if your player gets off to a hot start in their game, you actually have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. That gives you so much control. New user offer: download the Prize Picks app. The link is in the comments and the description. Use code HMA to get $50 in bonus lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 after you play just $5. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, let's go back to the 2024 season data. I don't know how much we can really judge from the nickel numbers because the sample size is so small. The numbers on a rate basis look terrible at nickel. He allowed a perfect quarterback rating when targeted, but he was only targeted twice the entire season when playing nickel. I don't really think we can do much analysis with that other than, yeah, those 2 plays were not great, but it's literally 2 plays. So I'm essentially just going to toss that sample out the window as too small to mean anything. 2025, neither the nickel nor the outside numbers are very good, to be honest. The big change that's happened for DaRon Bland over the past 2 seasons is that the overall impact has dropped significantly. All those splash plays and game-changing interceptions that he had earlier in his career have kind of gone by the wayside. His actual yards per target allowed at 8.62 last season was not that different than it was in 2023. The completion percentage allowed was a little bit higher than 2023, but it was actually better than it was back in 2022. But his nickel numbers compared to this past season actually got worse than they were in 2022. Everything was worse across the board in 2025. I think objectively, DaRon Bland was better at nickel than he was on the outside in both 2022 and 2025. But he also wasn't very good at either position in 2025, let's be honest. That Cardinals game lives rent-free in my mind. He got absolutely torched in that matchup. He was better when playing in the slot in 2023, but that's like saying the 97 grade on a test was better than the 95 grade. Like at that point when you're playing at such a high level, you'd actually rather have the 95 performance on the outside because outside corner is more valuable in general in the NFL. For me, this is not a situation where he can't play outside cornerback or he can only succeed in the slot. I don't think either of those narratives is true. But it is a situation where you have to ask, hey, you weren't good enough last year at either spot. Can you return to your previous form? Can the new coaching staff and it not being Matt Eberflus defense anymore actually make you better? Can you stay healthy for a full season? Because if you're battling foot injuries again, and this is a guy who before the past 2 years had not really been hurt ever in his career, if those injury issues don't get resolved, it doesn't matter if you're playing nickel, if you're playing outside corner, if they moved you to wide receiver, it's not going to matter. You're not going to be playing good enough, period. And I think this is a really important question for everyone watching. What is your confidence level in DaRon Bland bouncing back? Scale it for me from 1 to 10 in the comments section of today's show. 1 being you have no confidence, 10 being you're absolutely certain he'll return to Pro Bowl form. I've also seen the suggestion, the idea, the pitch, whatever you want to call it, that the Cowboys should just trade DaRon Bland or even cut him and move on. And this isn't that different from both the suggestion and the reality of the Trevon Diggs conversation from last year. Although I do think it's a different situation in terms of how the team actually feels about Bland as a player compared to Diggs. Let's break down the DaRon Bland contract so everyone understands the financial situation. He's got a $17 million cap hit in this upcoming 2026 year. The trade savings right now, if they traded him, would actually be negative. You'd lose some money. You'd only save about $1.2 million if you did the trade after June 1st, so you're essentially eating dead money if you trade him. The cut savings are really bad financially. It would be negative $13 million in dead cap if you cut him right now. The post-June 1st savings are only $294,000, which is basically nothing. None of these options are very good financially. It would also require him to pass a physical to avoid making the dead money situation even worse, which is a question mark we'll discuss more. I don't think you're going to see any team trade for DaRon Bland, and let's be objective about why. Even though those of us who want to believe in Bland think he's going to bounce back, what NFL team right now wants to pay a cornerback $13 million in cash this year when he's coming off a down year, actually 2 down years, and he's dealt with injuries in back-to-back seasons? That player profile we just described simply doesn't have trade value in the current market. Teams aren't lining up to take on that contract. And the Cowboys cutting DaRon Bland just to eat a bunch of dead money, I think that would be a pretty big surprise. I think Dallas is far more inclined to say no. Let's see what he can do. Let's have him hopefully ball out in Christian Parker's new defensive scheme and get back to being the awesome player we saw 2 seasons ago in 2023. Also worth mentioning is the 2027 outlook for his contract. There's very minimal cap jump from this year to next year. Cash owed stays the same at $13 million. The Cowboys could save $4.37 million or the full $13 million with a release on March 17th, which is the 5th day of the new league year. That's when $13 million of his contract becomes fully guaranteed. It's currently only guaranteed for injury, which is an important distinction. So we should all be big fans of DaRon Bland staying healthy, not just for this season, but for his future with the team. If he has a return to form this year, that $17 million cap hit is nothing. It's actually a bargain. The Cowboys could restructure it if they wanted to create more space. Or if the injuries remain a concern and he doesn't perform, they could try to move on from him next offseason. So here's my question. Will DaRon Bland be on the Cowboys roster in 2027? I for yes, N for no. Let me know in the comments section. The Cowboys didn't restructure DaRon Bland's contract this offseason, and I think the reason is pretty simple. They want to see how this year goes. If he can't stay healthy, if he gets banged up again throughout the season, if he's just not the same guy he was because of all the accumulated injuries, we've seen it happen time and time again with players. They can move on from him next offseason. The door to moving on from DaRon Bland is open. It's not the easiest door to walk through because of that injury guarantee in the contract. All the player has to do is say, yeah, my wrist hurts, I need a cleanup procedure, and now you can't make him pass a physical. Now, you can't cut him without the full dead cap. Now it's after March 17th, and the deal is fully guaranteed anyway. But if they do go down that path and move on from him in some capacity, I think we're likely looking at cornerback being a significant need, again heading into the 2027 offseason. There are still valid questions around Jordan Lewis and his age. In fact, the only player in the entire cornerback room, counting Caleb Downs as a DB that I truly trust long-term, is Caleb Downs. Kalen Carson is on a one-year deal worth $4 million. That's backup money, not starter money. Devin Moore was a fourth-round pick who hasn't played a snap yet. Take your pick of guys like Kalen Carson, Reddy Stewart, Tricky's Bridges, Darian Kendrick, and others. Multiple of those guys will not make the Cowboys' 53-man roster unless there's a rash of injuries in camp. So I'm hoping DaRon Bland plays better this season. I really am. But if he does not play better and the injuries continue, he'll absolutely be on all of our cut candidate lists next offseason, just like how Trevon Diggs was this time last year. All right, Cowboys Nation, that's the full breakdown on DaRon Bland's situation. Drop your takes in the comments. What's your confidence level 1 through 10? Do you think he should play nickel or outside? Will he be on the team in 2027? Let me know. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and share this with your Cowboys fan friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.